Hi there. Welcome to BlatzChatz. I'm here to talk about Aesop's fables and how those can relate to our modern professional and UX world. I'm excited. So let's get started. Hopefully, you are familiar with the American TV show called Ted Lasso. If you're not familiar with the storyline, Ted Lasso is an American football coach who is hired to coach an English Premier League soccer club. Lasso knows absolutely nothing about soccer, but he brings a naive yet sweet and wholesome vibe to the team. Lasso comes off as kind of clueless, magnified by his Southern American accent. You realize as the show goes on, he may not know a lot about soccer, but he teaches his team a whole lot about life. In one episode, Ted is confronted in a pub by one of the nemesis characters of the show. His name is Rupert, and Rupert is the team owner's ex-husband. Rupert challenges Lasso to a game of darts. Ted leads the crowd to think he does not know how to play darts by saying things like, "This is gonna be a hoot," in his goofy Southern American accent. As the game continues, it is revealed that Ted is actually a masterful dart player, and he suavely kicks Rupert's butt. So what's the moral of the story? We should find out as much as possible about someone before we come into conflict with them. Now, I know the topic that we are going to talk about today is fables and how those relate to the UX world and our professional world. And I know the example I just gave, it's not exactly a fable. I'll go into that a little bit more here in a minute. But that Ted Lasso scenario has some elements that make up a great story. The storyline is intriguing. Perhaps you found some aspects of the story relatable. Finally, the story is memorable. I know that my summary of that Ted Lasso episode just doesn't give the story justice. I suggest you check it out. It's a really good show. And maybe you'll find that it's memorable too. So let me run through what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to explain what Aesop fables are. I'm going to tell you who this Aesop fella is. I'm going to share a bunch of examples of stories and morals of those stories. And I'm going to show you how these classic fables can even be applied to our modern and professional worlds. I hope you're ready for a fun ride with a bunch of interesting stories. Did you know that some of the most famous idioms and phrases that we use today actually came from Aesop's fables? True story. Phrases like, "United we stand, divided we fall." "Don't count your chickens before they hatch." "Honesty is the best policy." "If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all." Those all come from the moral of Aesop fables. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these phrases. And part of the reason why they are familiar to you is, well, Aesop fables have been around for a really long time. How long? Let's get into that. So, who was this Aesop guy anyways? Yes, Aesop is a real human being. It's believed that Aesop was a slave and a storyteller who lived in ancient Greece between 620 and 564 BCE. This image here is thought to be a statue depicting the man and the legend, Aesop. Okay, so what actually is a fable? It's time for a little mini etymology lesson. The word fable comes from the Latin fabula, which means story. Fables are stories that have been shared orally for centuries. Initially, the fables were addressed to adults. Fables conveyed religious and social and political themes to get people to think about moral dilemmas, and to learn life lessons. Starting around the Renaissance time, fables and their life lessons were used to educate children through memorable stories. Fables traditionally have four central characteristics: symbolism, which is the characters in fables act as substitutes or symbolically as human beings. The characters' actions, which are usually negative, are meant to symbolize human behavior. Number two, anthropomorphization. Ooh, that's a big word. We'll say it again. Anthropomorphization is in most fables, but not all. And it means they have animals or other non-human objects as the main characters of the story. These animals are given human qualities. The third thing is lessons. Every fable has a moral lesson that comes from the story. For example, slow and steady wins the race. That comes from the fable of the tortoise and the hare. In that story, the hare, or a rabbit, brags about how much faster he is than the tortoise. So the hare challenges the tortoise to a race. The fast hare darts off and gets a big lead in the race. And then the hare gets cocky. The hare thinks he has such a big lead in the race that he has time to take a nap. So as the hare takes a nap, slowly but surely that tortoise walks along, and the tortoise travels at a slow pace, but he makes his way to the finish line. By the time the hare wakes up, the tortoise is at the finish line and he wins the race. So what's the moral of the story? Well, don't let your own arrogance get in the way of reality. In this case, really, the hare got cocky. He let his arrogance get in the way and he lost the race. And finally, number 4 is humor. Fables often have a lighthearted tone when showing the foolishness of human beings. I would also say there is a moral to that episode in that the characters were playing the part to illustrate a moral lesson. And it's these lessons that come up in Aesop's fables that I want to tie to our UX and our professional world. So the first couple of fables I want to share are about your career, specifically those of you who are considering taking a new job at another company. Let's start with the ass and his master. An ass, which is an old school name for donkey, not a jerk. An ass whose owner gave him very little food, and he had to work too much. This ass created a petition to be released from his present owner and to go to another owner. Well, the request is granted, and that ass is sold to a tile maker. Well, now the ass has to carry heavier loads and has to carry things like bricks. So the ass asks for another owner, and the ass is sold to a tanner, which is someone who makes leather from animal skins. Yikes! This ass realizes he's in even a worse scenario than he was with the first owner who was starving him, or the second owner who was overworking him by making him carry heavy bricks. So he says, it would have been better for me to stay with that first owner where I was starved, or that second owner where I was overworked, rather than my present owner, who will, even after I'm dead, tan my hide and make me useful to him. So what's the moral of the ass and the master? He that finds discontent in one place is not likely to find happiness in another. And you're probably familiar with the saying, the grass is not always greener on the other side. Or the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. What this idea speaks to is that sometimes changing jobs is not always the better option. Sometimes finding value in where you are with maybe what projects you're working on, that might just be the right place for you. And that leads me to another Aesop fable, the astronomer. So let me tell you about the astronomer. Yeah, I know I said that most fables have animals as the main character, but not all of them do. Also, you're going to see a lot of similarities to the ass and the master fable. One night, an astronomer went outside to check out the stars. All of his attention was fixed on the sky. He accidentally fell into a deep well. Whoops! From the bottom of the well, the astronomer yelled out for help until a neighbor finally came and helped him. When the neighbor learned what happened, the neighbor said, "Why, in trying to see into the heavens, do you not manage to see what is right here at your feet?" So, what's the moral of the story? We should never look so high as to miss seeing the things that are around us. And this can apply to a job we might be currently in, and thinking again that maybe the grass is greener on the other side. Maybe you are a UX designer working on enterprise software, and you think that it's not sexy enough. So you're itching to do something more fun, like maybe go to work for a company who creates trendy mobile apps. But step back for a second. Think about how much you could do for the users of that enterprise software. You might just be in the right job after all. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about relationships within the workplace. Sometimes building relationships can be tough. It takes effort to reach out to people, to get to know them, and to make a genuine connection. But forming these relationships with your product owners, developers, marketing folks, they can be the key to your success. So let's explore some fables that dive into the positive aspects of forming professional relationships. Let me tell you another story of the lion and the three bulls. A lion used to prowl around the field in which three bulls used to hang out. The lion tried to attack the bulls many times, but he never came near because the bulls turned around and put their horns out, always facing the lion. One day, though, the bulls got in an argument and they huffed off into different corners of the pasture by themselves. The lion noticed this breakup and attacked them one by one and finished all of them off. So, what is the moral of the lion and the three bulls? In union, there is strength. In other words, if UX designers stick together, they can keep the lion product owner from coming in and wrecking everything. No, I'm joking. Really, what it means is that if we build relationships and form an alliance toward a common goal, you could really get things done. And in the UX world, I think this speaks to the value of connecting with your developers, product managers, or whoever your partners are so that you can better understand each other. Uncover the challenges and the pain points that they have. You know, the classic skills UX people should have: empathy. And use that understanding of the people around you to move forward together towards success. Then you can build great stuff together as a team. In union, there is strength. Let's talk about the fox and the lion. That kind of sounds like a name of a pub where you could get a perfect pint, doesn't it? Anyways, on to the fable. A very young fox who had never seen a lion before happened to meet one in the forest. One look at the lion was enough to scare the fox off into a hiding place. Then the fox came across the lion again when he was walking around the forest. The second time the fox saw the lion, he stopped and hid behind a tree and watched him before he ran off hiding. But the third time the fox saw the lion, he was feeling a little bit more familiar with the lion, and he approached him. The fox boldly went up to the lion and said, "Hello there, dear friend." I think that many of us can relate to the moral of this fable. Acquaintance softens prejudice. How many times have we had assumptions, maybe even negative ones, about a stakeholder or about another person on our team? Maybe we were not sure about them. Maybe we did not agree with them on some point and we didn't start off on a good foot. I know I have been there. But then maybe we had a casual interaction with them. Maybe we had some drinks after work. Or we talked to them a little bit more deeply about the project we were working on. And then we kind of thought again, this person is not that bad. That is what this fable is all about. If we get to know a person a bit more, our prejudice and our assumptions about them start to go away. So I talked a lot about fables and how they relate to relationships in the workplace. Now let's talk about the user experience work itself. Whether you are a UX or product designer or researcher, I think there's some morals from Aesop fables that can even apply to our UX work. Let me tell you the story about the ass in the lion's skin. An ass or a donkey found a lion skin that some hunters had left out in the sun to dry. The ass put on the lion's skin and went toward the village. Everyone was terrified at the sight of the lion and ran off when he approached. Oh, man, the ass was so impressed with himself. He gave up his cover, though, as soon as he bragged about how scared he made everyone in the village. A fox came up to the ass and said, "Ah, I knew by your voice. If you had kept your mouth shut, you might have frightened me too. But you gave yourself away with that silly ass voice of yours." So the moral of the ass and the lion's skin: fine clothes may disguise, but silly words will disclose a fool. So how does this relate to the UX world? Well, to me, I have an interesting interpretation. Hear me out. I think it applies when a company insists on just reskinning an interface without making any usability or functionality improvements. I know some of us have been there. We're just told to make it look modern, make it look pretty, apply the new design system. Us UX pros know that more needs to be done than just making it look pretty. And you know what? Our users know it too. So this is why I encourage you to not fall for the moral of the ass in the lion's skin story. Fine clothes may disguise, but silly words will disclose a fool. Just applying a contemporary design to some old website or app may not be the best fix. Our silly words, like the fable said, might not be literal words. Those silly words might actually be a lack of improvement. Let's do right by our users when we upgrade an experience by not just applying a pretty new skin. Let's improve the usability as well. Our next fable is called The Frog and the Well, and I think it relates to UX research. So two frogs live together in a marsh. In one hot summer, the marsh dried up, so they had to leave and look for another moist place. I guess frogs like damp places. I don't know. After much searching, they came to a deep well. One of the frogs looked down into it and said, "Hey, let's hop in down there." But the other frog, he was a bit wiser. He said, "Not so fast, bud. What if this well dries up like the marsh did? Since it's so deep, how would we get out again?" So this fable has a moral I think that you might have heard of. Look before you leap. In other words, you should not do something without regard to the consequences. I think that this is especially applicable to user experience research. It's part of the reason why we conduct research, right? We conduct research to make data-informed decisions. We do generative research to make sure that we learn about our users' needs, their goals, and their pain points. And hopefully, we have the opportunity to do this foundational research so that we know we are solving the right problem and so that we can build the right solutions. But we can perform concept tests and usability tests to make sure that our designs are meeting our users' needs and expectations. This is why I think the moral of the lesson, look before you leap, really applies to UX research. Okay, let's jump now to a larger beast in the animal kingdom and talk about the Aesop fable, the lioness. So there were a few animals that were arguing about which of the animals produced the greatest number of babies at birth. When the lioness, or the lion's baby mama, said she only had one baby, all of the other animals laughed at her. The lioness laughed back, saying, "Ha ha, yeah, I might make only one baby, but that baby is a lion, and that baby is the king of the animal kingdom." So this is another famous saying you might be familiar with, but maybe you didn't know it came from an Aesop fable. I sure didn't know that this phrase came from an Aesop fable. So the moral of the lioness is quality, not quantity. And this reminds me of another phrase that is common in the UX world, the paradox of choice. When a person is presented with too many choices, they struggle to choose one. The same idea as Hicks' law, which says that the more choices you present to your users, the longer it's going to take them to make a decision. When we are designing an experience, it's really vital that we present the best options to our users rather than every option. We have the power to be like the lioness, the queen of the animal kingdom, and cater to our users' experience with only a few key options rather than everything under the sun. Quality, not quantity. Let's talk about the fable, The Boy and the Filberts. Now, there's some debate as to whether The Boy and the Filberts is actually an Aesop fable. But you know what? I like the story so much, I'm going to claim it's an Aesop fable today, and I'm going to share it with you. So the boy put his hand into a pitcher full of filberts, and filberts is another name for hazelnut. So the boy put his hand in and grabbed a handful, and he tried to pull it out of the pitcher, but he couldn't because the neck of the pitcher was too narrow. Unwilling to drop his filberts, yet he couldn't take his arm out of the pitcher, he started bursting into tears. So his friend said, "Hey, be satisfied with half of the amount and drop some of the filberts, and you will be able to take your hand out of the pitcher." Duh. So what is the moral of this story? Do not attempt too much at once. And this concept relates to UX in so many ways. Like the lioness fable, do not force too many options on the user. Provide information to the user in small, consumable chunks. Understand the critical use cases and user flows and start designing there. Create that optimal experience by understanding the key steps a person would take to complete a task. Also, this relates to Agile, right? This is why those who practice Agile break it into smaller chunks like stories and tasks so they can be completed in a sprint, rather than waiting months or years to release one big iteration. There are so many examples that I could go through that this concept applies to product and user experience, but I think you get the point. The moral of the story is don't try too much at once. Now, I want to wrap up with one more Aesop fable that's a little less about our UX or professional world and a little more about our personal existence. Let's talk about the lion and the mouse. Wow, I kind of have a lot of stories about lions today. Lions and asses and foxes. The lion and the mouse fable. One day, a lion catches a mouse, but the mouse begs to be let go. The mouse promises to repay the lion in exchange for his life. This sounds pretty good, so the lion agrees to let the mouse go. A few days later, the mouse finds that same lion caught in a hunter's net. The tiny mouse remembers the lion's mercy and chews through the rope until the lion is set free. So the moral of the lion and the mouse is that every act of kindness, no matter how small, is never wasted. Now, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. So when it comes to good fortune, sometimes there might be a way for you to pay it forward. Help your teammates out when they are a bit overwhelmed. Consider the perspective of another person, no matter how smart they may seem or what their title is. Stand up for the user when a request for a product or design seems to promote an opposite agenda. Basically, just be a good person. And remember, every act of kindness, no matter how small, is never wasted. I went through a lot today. I'm just going to throw them all on one place for you to see them all together. I hope you had as much fun as I did about learning these classic tales and the morals of these stories and how they can apply even now to our modern world. Now, granted, again, I know Ted Lasso, it's not really an Aesop fable, but I still think the moral of the story is worth revisiting. And that moral is we should find out as much as possible about someone before coming into conflict with them. Make informed decisions. This message can definitely be applied to our professional world and our personal world. Have empathy for our teammates and our stakeholders and our partners before assuming the worst case scenario. And when it comes to the UX world, understand our users and our customers so that we can build better products for them. I am going to have more content coming soon. In the meantime, drop me a little note in the chat of what you would like to see come to BlatzChatz. And subscribe to my channel so that you will be one of the first to know when that new content comes out. Thanks for joining me on BlatzChatz. Bye!